I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised we'd be cordial.
Hi, everybody. Kristin Walker here, and I love giving the date now on shows so you know exactly where we're at when it comes to the coronavirus. Today is April 20th, and I am talking with one of our podcasters, Dr. Janina Scarlet. Hello, how are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing okay. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I mean, you know, worried and concerned and all those things, but actually, surprisingly, doing really well. Mental health wise, I'm doing really well.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
So first, we're going to talk about this amazing graphic novel that you put out. I got a copy of it. It is incredible. You must be so proud.
Thank you so much. I am so honored and so humbled to be able to talk to you about this. This is something I've been working on for 10 years, and to see it come out, to see it be available in stores and online is just unbelievable. So thank you so much for talking to me about this today.
Absolutely. Now, just so our listeners are up to date, tell them the name of your two podcasts, and then let's talk about what the novel is about.
Sure. So I have two podcasts with my partner, Dustin McGinnis, and one of them is called Superhero Therapy, where we look at psychology behind different pop culture fandoms, such as Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek, etc. And right now our focus is entirely on how these fandoms can help us cope with the stress of the coronavirus. And then we have another podcast called Harry Potter Therapy, where we look at each chapter of the Harry Potter series and look at the psychology and mental health messages behind them.
And they've been so well received. And I know the minute that I think we had a scholarship so we could put both your podcasts on the network. And the minute I mentioned you, everybody went nuts and everybody wanted you to come on their shows.
Oh, thank you.
So the genesis of doing this as a graphic novel, can you kind of explain that journey?
It's interesting. It started out as a regular novel, and as it was developing, my editor actually suggested that we turn it into a graphic novel. He was actually looking to develop a graphic novel series with kind of a similar focus as the series that I was writing, and it just worked. It worked really well because I find that the graphic novel format allows it to be available for people of all ages. We had people as young as 7 read it and as old as 80. And people across the board reported that the characters were easy to relate to because of the facial expressions that they were able to see in the pictures. The artist that I'm working with, Vince and Valdia, is so amazing in being able to depict emotion, a wide range of emotions, whether it's somebody who's going through trauma or through a panic attack, or someone who's anxious, and even the kind of minutia of these emotions. And so I think the graphic novel aspect of it makes it really powerful.
Did you end up going to one of the Comic-Cons before, of course, we had self-isolation in place?
Yes. So
How
there
was
was,
that?
uh, there was, I went to San Diego Comic Fest.
Mm.
So it was a couple of days after the book came out. It was in March. It was really well received. And actually, even though WonderCon is canceled, they did have virtual panels. And my artist and I, as well as a few other individuals, were able to do a virtual panel on Dark Agents, and that will be available to everyone in a few weeks. So folks will be able to watch it on YouTube through WonderCon channel.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, I follow you guys obviously on social media, and I think I'm friends with both of you on our personal Facebook. And so listeners, I just want you to know that these two live the life of the Comic-Con fandom world. There's no joke here. They are in it. I see you guys with pictures and you're in your costumes and whatever. And I just think it is so cool.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
What do your patients think about that when they see, no, she's not just saying this, she really is a fan and she's also putting out her own material?
Well, I've had a lot of people talk about how helpful it's been for them to have a therapist that understands pop culture, because a lot of my clients relate to pop in more than just kind of an interest kind of way, in that for a lot of the people that I see, pop culture helps them to understand their emotions and to have almost like a surrogate family within their fandom, relating to fictional characters as well as to other fans of that particular show, for example. So for instance, within the Harry Potter fandom or supernatural fandom, there's so many individuals who talk about understanding the trauma that they went through, whether it's traumatic loss of a loved one or child abuse or assault that they went through the lens of the series, and that the characters being present in their lives help them to better cope with what happened to them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It puts it in a lens, and we had that they can relate to. And we had such a great response to the first interview that you did, where you really explained where that came from for you. So yeah, your heart and soul is in this. So do you see yourselves being, 90 years old, wheeling yourself into the Comic-Con of that time, still in your costume and doing your thing?
Pretty much, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the process of the graphic novel, I mean, I know it, it had come out, ahead of what's happened, but how has this, with this coronavirus going on, how is that structuring maybe you doing another one of these?
Yes. So the series are actually going to have 8 books. The second book right now is under review. And my hope is that the series will help folks to understand what they're going through. In the first book, in the first Dark Agents book, Violet, the leading character of that book, is a witch with PTSD. And when she was a small child, her parents were murdered by an evil necromancer, and she herself had to go into basically isolation and hide, and she wasn't allowed to go to school, she wasn't allowed to be around her friends. And so kind of very similar to what we're experiencing now, where many of us can't leave our house, and how frustrating this was for her, and how devastating the consequences can be when we're not kind of following some of the protocols, and also what we need to do in order to find support for ourselves in our time of struggle. So my hope with the series is to demonstrate what different types of mental health disorders are, how we can find hope and resiliency and healing with different mental health disorders, and also to provide a sense of empathy for people who might not struggle from these disorders, but might hopefully gain a better understanding of what other people are going through and what they need.
You know what I've found, and I hope that this, the good piece of this remains, with whatever's going to happen in the time that we're in right now. But I found that all of the people in our community, that is this network, obviously we're in this field, we're entrenched in it. And so we're, we all knew, there's going to be a lot of people sitting with their feelings that are not used to sitting with their feelings. And of course we are, because we're in this field. And so we're finding people reaching out more and more and more than they ever have before to communities like ours, because even though we have our own fear and we have our own upset about what's going on, but we seem to be, I don't want to say handling it better, because that's not the right way to put it. We seem to be able to handle it in a more compassionate way towards ourselves and others, because we've struggled with and been open about our struggle with mental health challenges.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. I think more people are more social now than they probably have been. And you're right, people are reaching out more and sharing their stories, and I think connecting on a much deeper level than kind of the surface, hi, how are you, I'm fine, that all of us were used to before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually really refreshing. And I hope more and more individuals will do that, will reach out to other folks and know that if any of you listeners out there who are going through something right now are feeling alone and feeling stuck, chances are everyone around you is feeling the same way. And by reaching out, you're also helping them. And so by starting these conversations, we're helping each other. It's all of us virtually holding hands together to stand up against what's happening right now.
Absolutely. And I think it's been fascinating too, to all of the people that I know that are very introverted and that already socially isolated. They've looked at this time as, thank goodness, a weight is lifted off my shoulders, because now it's okay for me to not hug, not have to be in close proximity to people. Like they feel a freedom in this time, because that's how they were anyway before this all started.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's good to champion that. I mean, that's in your work and your stories, and anything to do with comic books and that whole world is always the underdog. And so I've had a lot of people say, I don't have to make excuses not to people.
Exactly. Not to socialize and not to hang out. And that's the thing, is that I think now more than ever, our mental health is so important. And so it's true for a lot of people, the pandemic is a much welcome reason to give ourselves the kind of self-care that we need. And whether it's during the pandemic or after the pandemic, I think that we all are allowed to stand up for ourselves. We're allowed to say, I have too much on my plate and I can't meet up, or, I just don't like to hug if people don't want to. And I think it's perfectly okay for us to notice what our needs are and advocate for ourselves.
Agreed. I love that. I love that now I don't want to shake hands, or I don't feel comfortable hugging, and that is okay across the board. That feels very good to a lot of the trauma survivors that listen to, our shows on the network as well, that, I've had issues with being touched in violent ways or just in inappropriate ways. And now they don't feel like they have to sort of shirk or close themselves off or avoid things. They can just outright say, they don't even have to say anything with what's going on right now. But even after this is over, I've heard some of them say, well, I'm just going to continue on. And I feel emboldened now and empowered to say, that's not okay. I don't do that, and not feel weird about it.
Exactly.
How are you faring with, because I know a lot of the people that you work with are kids. So how are you seeing the parents and, their kids coming through this particular time that we're in, and focusing on mental health care with themselves and their children?
I actually don't work with kids. That's a
Oh,
common misconception. So a lot
gotcha.
of people think that because I do superhero therapy that I work with kids. And the truth is there are already so many resources for children that include pop culture and play therapy. And my work is actually focused on older adolescents and adults.
Well,
And
that's what I was thinking of when I said kids. Sorry, I meant teenagers.
so I work with some teenagers, 16 and 17 and up, and also adults. And it's interesting, for some folks, this what's going on right now is actually really helpful because there is less exposure to bullying, for example, if they were facing bullying in school, and an easier sleep schedule, because unfortunately not a lot of schools were implementing the updated sleep schedule where classes would start later, and some schools were still starting at 7 a.m., which especially for teenagers is really damaging. So a lot of teenagers are actually doing better, but there are a lot that are also really struggling if they're not able to see their friends, for example, or if they're stuck in a household where there might be abusive family members, for instance, or if they don't have their own space. That can be really damaging. And so wherever possible, I do highly encourage folks to either go for walks, of course, while still practicing safety precautions, whether it's gloves or masks or physical distancing or all of the above, and trying to create our own version of a safe space. And sometimes that might be just stepping into the bathroom to breathe for a few minutes. Especially when we're in households where things are chaotic or possibly abusive.
That's the piece that's been rough, I know, for a lot of people, when they have to, stay nestled in doors with people that live in the same house, whether it's roommates, whether it's your family, whether it's friends, whatever it is, or people that were just kind of got stuck in the midst of isolation, got stuck somewhere, and then they're staying put there. If it's a toxic environment, having to stay in that adds tremendously to the stress level of already what's going on.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, can you give an idea of, just for the listeners to know, when the series, like how often are they going to come out, and what your promotion schedule looks like in this new era of, this pandemic?
That's a great question. So right now it's hard to tell just because unfortunately so many publishing companies are affected by the pandemic. So our hope, mine and the artist's hope, is that we'll have something, if not every year, then maybe every other year. The second book is written, and as I mentioned, it's under review. The rest of the books in the series are either written or outlined. And so my hope is that each of the books in the series will help folks with different mental health disorders, because each book will focus on a different character and will focus on a different mental health disorder. But as far as the schedule, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, and I know none of us are. It's been interesting to have. I was scheduled to speak at 3 conferences this year. 2 of them completely canceled and are going to try to do next year, and one of them has moved to October, and we'll see if that's going to work out, because a lot of people coming to that particular autism conference are coming from Europe, and we'll see if that's going to be allowed.
Right, exactly.
Well, I'm so glad that you did this book. It was awesome. I felt very hip when I got it in the mail. The graphic novel, I should say. That shows you how dorky I am. I'm calling it the wrong thing. But anyway, I wanted to thank you for coming on and talking about this, especially with what's going on, and give you a huge congratulations on getting this done. I can tell from your post that you guys are so happy about it, and it makes all of us just really happy for you and for anyone reading what you've put out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And listeners, thank you for tuning in with Dr. Janina Scarlet on Mental Health News Radio. Hi, listeners. I'll make it quick.
These are some really cool places that give discounts and other cool things for listeners of Mental Health News Radio Network. If you want to get amazing help with healing from narcissistic abuse, go to healfromanarcissist.com. If you want CBD products that are the best of the best, I use them myself, go to proze.com and use the code mentalhealth20, mentalhealth20. If you want to get daily perk ups that help retrain your brain to think more positively, go to perkupdaily.com. And also, just because this one's fun, snarkycandles.com. I guarantee you'll love them. Snarky with a Y, SNARKY candles.com. And don't forget, if you want to hear all the shows on the network about first responders, you can go to firstrespondernmentalhealthnetwork.com, and all of our shows that focus on narcissistic abuse, narcissisticabusehealingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it, but I'm opposing.
Good boy.